Are we going to wait a couple more minutes? Oh, actually, I guess we're starting. It's at 2:50. Starts at 2:50. So let's not 3. For some reason, I thought it was 3. So let's jump in. Thanks everyone for joining this talk. I have to be honest. Had a tough time coming up with a good name for this talk. I wish it was a little creative. Data erasure and governance and FlutterFire doesn't really, get people in the room, but I'm very happy that everyone is here otherwise. But through the talk, I may come up with new ideas for the talk. So hopefully you guys can follow along. So today we're going to be talking about Flutter. We're going to be talking about Firebase. We're going to be talking about data ethics, trust, privacy, as I often normally do. But we're going to start with home ownership. And I know that throws you for a loop, but follow along. So last year, I moved my family into a new home. And as some of you are familiar with that process, it involves inspectors coming and checking and negotiating things for you to consider, something for your seller to fix, things that need to be addressed around the home. Like while you're in the middle of closing on your home, you're deluged with, getting to learn about all the things that just could blow up at any point if you bought the home, whether it's a new home or an older home. I guess specifically an older home, right? A year later, specifically like last August, for those in the Northern Virginia in the US region, we had a few thunderstorms and high winds. And because of that, I had a leak in my roof. And if that wasn't enough, that same storm, I think that same week, I had flooding in my basement. I had a sump pump give out. I didn't even know what a sump pump was. I didn't know I had one. So forgetting or not knowing about all the things that I need to maintain in my home means I can incur unplanned cost, right? I started looking into services, talked to service professionals, and everything was a little too expensive for me. So I took to Twitter. I asked, homeowner Twitter, I guess you can call them, about 1,800 of them, how many of you, have this problem that I have? And most forgot. I mean, we have tools, right? I can put a sticky note on the fridge so that whenever the fridge goes out, I can remember who fixed it last and when. If I had the money, I could pay for a service provider to come in and check my roof every quarter or every couple of years. So I did. I looked at that. I also looked at adjacent tools, a little expensive, a little special purpose or general purpose, but I needed something special purpose for me. Okay, so I started prioritizing my problems, and then someone mentioned, you should build this, and you should build this. And I go, well, I'm not an Android developer. I'm just a product manager. And so let me pick up a brand new language, Dart, sure, and pick up Flutter and my experience with Firebase, and it'll all solve my problem. So I went down this rabbit hole. To do this in a special purpose way, I would need to upload things like home inspection reports, receipts, a data set that may include personally identifiable information. And I expect the application, if I decide someday to give it out to other homeowners or have other people pay for this, that if I have users that start churning over time, they may want to delete their data. They may want to delete their information, and I shouldn't keep them from doing that, because if they're not using the app, why stay in my system? I want to practice data minimization as much as I can. So at this point, you're wondering, you've probably figured out what the story has to do with Flutter, serverless approaches, and Firebase. So today's talk, again, turns part of my insights and research and finding the perfect tool that is not Trello to solve my problem. And I'm going to use Flutter, Firebase, Cloud Functions to do that today, and we'll walk through that. The agenda, before we get into the code, I would like to talk about a little bit more about why we need to respect user deletion requests or data erasure requests for the legal folks in the room. Users' data and how to sort of respect your users' data throughout the entire experience of the app. And then we're going to walk through how I implemented that and just wrap up. Okay, so there are two goals of this talk. One, to help you understand data ethics and why trust matters, data trust matters, and how to implement data erasure with Flutter and Firebase. Let's jump in. Before we do that, I'm Noble. Hi. Wish I was out in the wild with you at Capital One, but this will do. This is great. Thank you so much for joining. I'm a longtime product strategist, a recovered startup founder, and I currently work at Venterra Corporation in the DC Metro region. And I recently certified in AI product management through Udacity, and during my capstone project, I actually demonstrated this problem. I just recently graduated. The ability to send notifications to a homeowner when there is harsher than usual weather in a season. So in the summer, I would know that my HVAC and my AC may be getting hammered, right? And so if that sustains because of global warming or whatever over a period of time, a couple of years, it may need a look sooner rather than later. So then I would use the data models insights as a UX enhancement to reduce the number of steps for a homeowner like me to enter the stuff that I needed to track, within my home. So like the date, I would just enter when it was installed, and then it will tell me when it should be, when I should send out someone. And then when the date came up, it would notify me in a timely, contextual, and hopefully relevant way. Again, if you remember from that Twitter poll, my focus was to know about something before something went really horrible, like an entire basement flooding. That sucks, right? I hope you never have to go through that. But actually, all of that is not what this talk is about. It's adjacent. It's the same project, a personal project of mine. And I'll get there someday. But for this demo, we'll look at patterns on how we can use Flutter and Firebase to handle a user's data erasure requests using the stack that I mentioned before, okay? All right, so let's talk about why we need to respect users' right to remove their data from your app. We do that so that we can, give clear context. So what are you collecting? How long are you collecting it for? You may have a justifiable reason to collect this information, and that's fine. But then you want to also give them a choice. When you give them a choice to either later revoke access to a specific piece or just delete their information, that should be intuitive. And those are the controls within your app that you may want to look at. And avoid those dark patterns that we've all known. And I'll talk about that here in a second. And then understanding that if a user wants to delete their information, I can't state this enough, that they may not find value at that very moment, and they'll churn anyway. So it may be your app, but it's not your data per se. It's my name, my email, my receipts, my home inspection report. Yes, it might give you value, but it's actually not your data. So choice, control, and erasure, right? So let's first talk about choice and control as it pertains to data erasure. As app companies, we sometimes lean on the total user count as our vanity metric. We use it to impress our investors or marketing on our website, that kind of stuff. Because of that, we tend to hoard a lot of data. It makes it difficult for a user to find where to erase their account or delete their account. You've seen this pattern. You go to the website, you go to the app. If you're lucky, the feature is buried somewhere deep in the app. If you're unlucky, like me, you have to email the company in order to remove that information. And that's a dark pattern. That just is putting too many blocks, and you'll never gain that user ever again if they had a horrible experience. So in my example with this app, I should clearly state what information that this homeowner assistant app, is what I guess I'm going to call it, wants to collect when a user visits their profile, for example. It's good practice to provide context into what data is collected and provide them enough information about the service. Bonus points is if you give them agency to not just delete their account altogether, but just remove certain, act on their choices on what they want you to collect. Say, I don't want an ad mob thing. I don't even know what an ad mob is. I don't want any advertising sold to a broker. So just remove that part. I'm happy to use your app. Let them do that. All right. So also bonus point is to, send them an email with, any information. So I'm actually going to start at the end. I'm actually going to show what the app looks like, just to bring things in context. So first time developing an Android app for Flutter, or an Android app by myself, so be forgiving with the interface. But I'm just pulling from my name here is Edard, like Edard Stark. I'm pulling my profile picture. That's personally identifiable. I could provide a little bit. I could do better by providing a little bit more as to what I collected, my home address, so you can actually see a lot of information here. I'm also, when you onboard, these are literal reminders that I have for myself, and I can click into it and learn a little bit more about when it was installed, and the system should be able to recommend when I should get it serviced. This icon is for an HVAC. This is a garbage disposal that I installed, or microwave that I also installed. So that gets you familiar with it. At any point, I've made it this may be a little bit over the top, but I've made it glaringly obvious where to go ahead and delete that. And I'll come back to this app here soon. All right. So, hold on, let me do this right. Get my presenter view back up, get my speaker notes. All right. So the choice, the choice and the controls have to be clear. You can be as obnoxious as a big old red button if you want. But what about context? What about the data that you collect? You can do some of that on the interface, share, who it's shared with, but then your UI starts moving away from the reason why they downloaded in the first place. A common practice is to, probably recommended by your legal team, is to stuff all of that information in often hard to read terms of service. I have some bad news, or terms and conditions. Bad news is that no one reads those. It's too much of a cognitive load when all I want to do is to download the fart app and prank somebody. So I basically just skip it. I just hit that checkbox and log in and just trust that everything is going to be okay. So in our Home Assistant app example, yes, I'm going to have a terms of service. I have to, right, in order to publish my app to an app store, or the iOS store, or Android, Google Play rather. But my terms have to be written in plain language. So I should note here that some companies and services and industries are required by law to keep your data even after a user requests deletion, like fintech and healthcare. There are a bunch of regulations that require this. So your experience through that last stage of that user wanting to remove their information should have that context. What how long are you going to keep it or retain that information even after I leave? And then, what happens next? And really quickly, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but if you've ever seen a talk that I've given, if you haven't, it's on YouTube. I go into details on what PII is. Traditionally, it's just one or more of name, email addresses, social security number, PHI, personal health info. Specific to our app, we're taking this left column, and we're also taking in consideration any of this information that may be swept up into personal tax information, inspection reports. Of course, my house has to have a location information if I'm to implement some advanced AI system that I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to get there, I promise. If I want to sell this app, I want to be able to, pass banking information somehow, photos, all that stuff is really not your data. It provides you as a business value, but your users do not have to sacrifice privacy at the expense of the service, the great service that you may be providing. So just to wrap this first definition section up, why respect user erasure requests? Because it gives context to your user. It gives them the agency to act on their consent while they're using your app. And obviously, they expect clear, accessible controls to act on those choices. Data privacy at the end of the day is a sum of clear context and trust that would bring a customer back to you if they should want to leave. So I promised I was going to think about other titles for this talk. So as I was talking, I thought of one. So hello again, I'm Noble. Today's talk is going to be about how a panicked product lead went from WTF is Flutter to get a working application in about 5 weeks. And that was all thanks to Flutter and Firebase. Like I said in the beginning, we're going to be building deletion into this app so that our user feels confident that their information is truly gone when they choose to delete it. And to do this, this is not a functional requirement. The first bullet here is not a functional requirement per se, but I actually want to look forward and audit my application and understand, the impacts of data that I collect in case there's a breach or in case, user wants to delete it. What should I collect and how should I collect it? And that goes into how you model your data as well, like how you set up your database. As part of that, databases are part, NoSQL databases are part of Firebase. So I want to be able to configure Firebase and again, review, how I structure that data so that when I delete something, it's truly gone. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We can come back to this slide. I get a lot of questions about PIA, and I can do an entire talk on this, but that's not what you're here for. The long and short of it is you need to understand your risk, any risk that you have, find opportunities to minimize your data, and then use that as a positive sum opportunity to provide controls to help your users help you minimize your data. So in the Firebase setup, for me, my experience was pretty easy. I actually didn't have to build a single line of code to get this functionality working. I used a packaged collection of cloud functions called extensions. Found that tucked away on the Firebase console. And I'll show you that here in a second. And what I had to do was wire that. Obviously, I need my user to authenticate, so I need to wire up my authentication. I'm using Flutter and Firebase, so there are extensions for that with FlutterFire, the official tooling for Firebase and Flutter applications, libraries. And of course, install my extensions. And again, you could find this screen that you see on the right in the Firebase console. What I did to configure it was to basically, again, looking at how I wanted to structure my data, I ended up with two collections. One was called reports, and all reports did was just, track my user state, last time they logged in, when they logged out, that kind of stuff. So nothing really fancy there. And then I chose to store all the assets that the user wants to track and all the metadata for that in another collection called users. And I'm using a recursive mode to delete, to trigger, for the function to trigger and know to delete everything up the chain, up the tree, so that for sure, not only is, if I request to delete from this app, is my profile gone, but anything within those two collections are also gone. Again, this is the URL if you're curious about learning about extensions. So you've got a fancy interface, but you can also choose alternatively to install this via the CLI, right? So to do that, it's an npm call, and of course that's the Firebase extension string, and of course your project ID that you want to associate it with. In my database, I think I've already talked about this. You can see here I've got a massive collection of every user, and I probably need to switch back to the console so you can actually see this in action. So here I'm on my, that was me in the last 30 minutes, making sure the demo gods were with me. So I log into my interface here, and again, I just showed where you find the extensions. It's tucked away quite a bit, bottom left-hand corner. And of course, you can reconfigure it at any time that you need. There's some catches though, and I'll talk about that here in a second. In my case, I'm using my fake user, and it's got a UID. These are purged, don't worry, it's not secret. So I'm gonna be purging this anyway so you can hack it. I'm just kidding, I don't know what I'm talking about. All right, so yeah, so this is a UID that I'm using in my reports collection. So that was the user account that I used to log in right before this talk. And of course, that's the record just to make sure that the demo is working. Okay, and we'll walk through how this extension works in a second. Actually, I'll do that while I'm here so I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. So I'm going to do a split screen here. Hopefully you're seeing everything as I am. It's hard to know sometimes. So Edard, this is probably an old account. I can go ahead and delete it. This is my phone, actually. Now talking about privacy, and you have my real email address. That's okay. You can email me and ask questions later. All right, so this is Edard. We can, if there's lots of users, one way that I use, I'm sure there's a better way, is to look at the first couple characters of my UID. And wait, hold on, let me refresh this. Oh, there we go. That was weird. This is my UID. That's the account that I just created, right? I'm going to log in as Edard again. All right, so it brings me back in. So we were here last time. I'm going to go ahead and delete the account. So that's sort of the advanced way to do it. I can also test this before I had this all wired up. I could just create users, and I'll do that here in a second. And so once that is gone, you notice on the left, it was really quick. The collection has just totally disappeared. Obviously, it works, thank goodness. And my user is no longer there. So I'm going to just type in Jared Android Summit.org so we can just play this back. Got to go really secure with my passwords. And I've got a new user. over here, we're doing it the roundabout way. This should update almost immediately with the user account. If not, I can just refresh. Oh, that's right, because that person hasn't logged in yet. Something wonky is going on. Let me go back to the root. Come on, demo gods. All right. Anyway, we can recreate that here again and see whether we can fake it. Anyway, we'll go back to our slides and come back to this later. I got ahead of myself a little bit, but that's okay. All right. Let me make this full screen. Right, so hopefully you see where I'm going with this. In CloudFire Store, those two collections had a purpose. They're storing one was storing more personally identifiable information than the other. In a click, we know that it was truly purged. If a user added points, I would have sent them a bundle of any information that I created another cloud function to send them a bundle of anything that they've created so that they can carry that, liberate their own data. That you get points for that if you take that extra step, and it's good practice. All right, so Firebase extensions. So Firebase extensions are pretty much the place where and I want to briefly talk about those as well. Like there's a deletion app, as I mentioned, but if you browse the full set, there are a ton of other things, from triggering emails, which I just talked about, to resizing images, that kind of stuff. All right, so just streamline this. All right, so just to wrap this second section up, what did we do? We wanted to think ahead, look at the impact of the data that we were collecting. We wanted to set up Firebase, and then implement our extension within Firebase. And that took all but like 30 minutes for the first time, just coming in cold for me. All right, I'm going to change the title of this talk anyway. I think folks are falling asleep, so I'll make it very interesting. I think if I'd submitted this talk with this title, I'd have gotten more people. So the title of this talk, welcome, I'm Noble, is how Flutter turned an idea into a prototype very quickly. We're going to walk through the code. I've already done the demo, so I got ahead of get ahead a little bit. When I was doing the demo, one thing that I should have mentioned, I was showing you the console, is that I'll be remiss if I don't mention that Firebase extensions are still in beta. So, use at your own risk. Hopefully it's backward compatible, but it may be backward incompatible if they add on and improve things on the Firebase team. Firebase required you to use a pay-as-you-go plan, a Blaze plan. So there's some cost there, but it's kind of nominal. I think it's a fraction of a cent, it's like 0.01 of a dollar or something like that for each instance that you install. Additionally, obviously this goes without saying, but the more extensions that you add contribute to your overall usage of Firebase services. But I think you're only charged if it exceeds the free tier. So even if you're on the Blaze plan, I've never seen a bill from Google. Of course, I've only started this 5 weeks ago, so fingers crossed. All right, so we're going to walk through. I'm not going to get into the weeds of installing the plugins, but I can sort of show you how I did it. We're going to set up our IDE. I'm not going to set up an IDE on a demo, but these are things that you should obviously do. And then how to implement and monitor the extension, and then we can land this plane. All right, so yet again, I'm going to. This is how I should have done it in the start. So I'm going to bring up my my inspector here. Raise your hands. I probably can't see your hands, but anyone on the staff, please let me know if this is hard to read. There's a lot going on. I'll try to clean things up. Let me go to Zen mode. Okay. So first is my PubSpec YAML file, where of course I'm authenticating with Firebase. So I need core. I need to be able to understand what's happening. So I throw in analytics. I'm doing some new, as of I love to live on the edge. So my last commit to this code base involved FCM and Firebase messaging. I'm an overachiever, I guess, but I'm not demoing that today. Critical is Firebase auth. And that's pretty much it. Of course, now I can't figure out how to get out of Zen mode. And then another critical piece to consider is, oh, there we go. All right, never mind, I'm not gonna get into that. All right, so delete user. So I've got an auth class and I'm basically doing an asynchronous, I'm running an asynchronous function to listen for a user. Once it finds a user that I'm keyed in on and they've requested to delete, I implement that elsewhere in my profile. I'm basically implementing it here on my profile screen, as you saw when I walked through that, and then somewhere down, I'll just log out. When it's just basically just requesting, running that function after a dialogue is, are you sure you really want to delete this? Everything is going to be gone. So there's some trade-offs that you're going to have to make. Don't make it obnoxious. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Kind of thing. But just give the purpose here is to give your users some assurances that you are truly no longer going to have a copy unless you're justifiably obligated to keep it. And if so, just letting them know, giving them that context, you know, this is what's going to happen once you delete your data. We're going to have to retain it because we have HIPAA laws that we need to comply with, or what have you. Okay. How are we doing on time? All right, we're doing good. So just to round that up, I plugged in my Firebase dependencies within my PubSpec file, as I showed you before, and then I ran pubget to get the latest on those. Runs automatically sometimes when I notice when you just sit there for a couple seconds. But I ran it just in case. Obviously, I'm actually running this asynchronous function because I'm connecting over an API. I learned very recently, and it sort of broke my brain, that, and you guys know this probably, that you know, Cloud Firestore is actually a serverless function, a serverless app itself, and so we're building serverless applications on top of serverless applications so that we can serverless applications while we serverless. That is awesome. So, and one thing also to note is that one thing I didn't show because I haven't implemented it yet is those PDFs that I was talking about, or receipts of photos. Those I'm going to leverage Google Cloud Storage or Firebase Cloud Storage. And that also can be configured in the extension in order to respect and for the trust of my user that I'm actually purging their information. Again, bonus points if I sort of bundle up all they've entered and email it to them and say, come back soon. All right, and so this was my implementation of the button. It's just a widget that says if you press the thing, you know, run this function within my, wherever I've defined it. All right. All right, so last thing is monitoring. Obviously, you're implementing this, you want to test it. I was going to try to test it earlier, but for some reason, my collection kept on disappearing. That's fine. But essentially, you monitor this stuff because extensions are actually simply cloud functions, right? Just packaged up for you. So you would go to your functions section of the console here. As you can see something familiar, we've got the extension, the delete user extension here, and look at the health. There's hopefully no bugs. I can look at my logs if I'm looking for something specific, obviously all the users that I've historically done, and you can see how many invocations that you've had over a specific period of time, right? In case you did something and you're starting to see a fee. Again, this is pay as you go, Blaze plan. I've never gone over that threshold, okay? That's that's how you monitor your stuff. You can actually test without actually wiring your app at all. You can just do everything on the console or the command line interface as you need. So let's wrap this up. I keep doing this wrong. There are no speaker notes. I just in case I wrote something and I want to remember. See, I promise. All right. So to wrap this presentation up, and then we can sort of go into the final words. We set up our IDE. I found using VS Code was sort of the most familiar thing that I could do, and luckily Dart Awesome, so the Dart plugin, the Dart plugin, the Flutter extension plugin, and Awesome Flutter snippets really helped me along the way. You can obviously build this in Android Studio as well. You get a lot of benefits that way. Firebase.flutter.dev gives you a list of all the FlutterFire plugins that you can use. In my case, I was just focused on auth analytics and the messaging stuff. All of those for sure are available in Android. Give or take, you might have some of these if they're available for web. On official Firebase, they'll be available on FlutterFire. And then, of course, Flutter is available on Macs, on Raspberry Pis, if it has a screen, obviously. Windows just recently launched. None of those have official support with FlutterFire yet. Android Wear, I'm big with wearables. It doesn't have it, so Googlers, if you're listening, hook a brother up. So implementing and monitoring your extension. That's in your Cloud Functions panel, as you saw. And so that's basically how to wire everything up and you're off to the races. Just if you've seen my talks before, you've seen the slide. Why does this matter? Again, respecting erasure requests are important because it puts you at less risks. Also of violating any laws or regulations that are out there. And so that's on the de-risking yourself part, but there's also the doing it because you want to afford trust, and trust is currency with any software or any company that collects users' information. Recently, there's been a growth for the past several, maybe a decade or two, a growth in data, and that brings breaches. Every other week, there's another critical breach and your information is out there. And because of that, there's been a growth in regulations around that around the world. And so you might be thinking about this talk as, okay, well, let me implement delete just to de-risk myself. But I want to say, look at this as a positive sum opportunity to be innovative in how you build applications. I'll give you an actual example. Rather than collecting all the information at once, you'll notice how Android and iOS progressively request access to certain sensors in the hardware. Think about that. So progressively disclose what information you need and give your users the choice and clear controls to act on those. And if you're wondering, well, it's just GDPR, right? I'm not doing business in the EU. I don't care about the EU. Well, unfortunately, every single continent has, including the great continent of California with their recently announced CCPA law, which is basically the leading the leading regulation for privacy in the US. This is a pat myself on the back kind of thing. So I've talked about context, choice, and control a lot, and I'm proud to share that last month, this endless, pillaging and sort of talking about privacy, got this work, that context control and choice work into in a privacy framework for open AR cloud and the XRSI, basically rules that we need to sort of, these companies need to consider when building for VR or AR. And that sort of brings my love for augmented reality, extended reality, and data privacy into one. So go look it up. It's called that privacy framework. All right, let's wrap this up. So what did I learn? Choose the right tool, whatever works in your context. This is an opportunity. It's a positive sum. Think about minimizing data, puts you less at risk for anything, and it gives a better experience for your users. Folks in enterprises might look at Firebase and cloud, GCP maybe, or Flutter as shiny toys. Well, you know, Tencent, Google, a lot of larger companies use this framework. And you know, it may seem, you know, less complex in your context, but it's very powerful. So use it to rapidly prototype stuff. And with that, I think I'm a little over, but I'm gonna ask the staff to open it up for any questions or any additional information that you'd like to know.
Yep, so chat is open. Folks should be able to post a question if they have it. If they'd rather, they can also take it to the Slack channel, which I've posted in the chat.
All right, so I'm going to try to open this. Oh, I don't have Slack on this machine. So I don't have this.
It'll open up in a web browser if you don't have it.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Oh, geez, I missed a lot. I should have had the chat window open this whole time. All right, so no question. No questions so far. Slack client. Oh, this is dangerous. Hold on. Let me open it in another window. And by the way, Jared or anyone, if there are any questions, if you can just restate it, because I'm gonna have to log in on my browser. Or is everyone still here?
Where did you get the pullover?
Oh man, you guys are awesome. I actually should have started with that. Thanks, good question. Sean, this has been awesome. You guys have treated me very well. This is my second talk at Android Summit. And this time the swag is amazing. I'm gonna be wearing this everywhere. Hopefully it doesn't get too stinky. You guys sent it to me, so that's the answer to your question. And thank you so much for putting this together. I'm honored and blessed to be able to share some thoughts about some things with you guys.
Well, we're so glad to have you. I'm going to stop the recording. And like I said, folks, if you got questions, Slack room, and thank you so much.